This video is on the introduction of anatomy and physiology, the current course. I'm pretty sure all of you are aware that this course entails learning of your body parts, its function, and that means that this course is mainly responsible for you to learn about yourself. So today's introduction, we are going to learn about the two terms, which is anatomy and physiology first, and then we are going to learn what it entails, what is the overall idea behind this entire course. So the first and foremost thing to understand is what is anatomy, right? The word anatomy is a Greek word and it comes from the word anatome, which means cut apart or dissect. And it is a study of the structure of body parts and their relationship with one another. It tells about what are the different structures associated with different body parts. Okay, so for example, if you have a heart, so we learn about the different parts about the heart. Okay, so what are the different valves involved, what are the different chambers associated with it, and we will learn about all of this in the cardiovascular system when we learn heart. So this is the anatomical structure of the body parts for anatomy. And the scientists which study about the anatomy is known as anatomists. And there are two kinds or two ways in which we can study anatomy. One is known as a gross or macroscopic anatomy, which we learn about the bigger structures. And microscopic anatomy is the one we learn about under the microscope, which are much smaller and you can't see it with your naked eyes. The other part is physiology. Physiology is the study of functions of the body and the structural mechanism. So whatever the anatomy entails, the function associated with it is learned in physiology. So, for example, cardiovascular physiology is we learn about how the heart functions as a pump. Okay, so there are many such examples where this the anatomy of a organ or a part is associated with its function, and it is very well demarcated, so we know what the structure is and we exactly know what the function is. Okay, so these two terms actually work hand in hand. They are almost the two faces of the same coin. Okay, and we'll learn about them more. The anatomy, the study of anatomy or the structure of the body parts can be, you can see it by your naked eyes and see the different parts and understand them. And some of the branches of it is surface anatomy. So it's the superficial markings that you can see without the use of a microscope. And we learn about surface anatomy, bone markings when we go into skeletal system. Regional anatomy is how we can divide the body into different regions like head, neck, trunk, upper body parts and lower body parts, upper limbs, lower limbs, and learn about the regional anatomy. And then there is systemic anatomy where we learn about the systems, that is, for example, cardiovascular system, renal system, or the reproductive system. There are 11 such systems, and we will be learning each one of them. The anatomy or the microscopic anatomy, which you can see with your eyes, like, without the use of a microscope, is microscopic anatomy. So you need a microscope in order to be able to see these structures. And there are two different kinds. One is known as cytology, where you learn about the study of the cells, and the histology, where you learn about the study of the tissues. So Cytology, the word cyto means cell, and the study of the cell, definitely that's the reason it's called cytology. Histo is related with tissue, and so basically study of the tissues is called histology. Physiology, on the other hand, has many parts because each system is associated with its own physiology. And some of them are listed in here, like the cell physiology is basically what are the chemical processes that goes on within the cell or between the cell. How does one cell talk to another cell? That's basically the cell physiology. Then there is specialized physiology, which is a second point in here, where we learn about the organs. For example, if you're talking about cardiovascular system, we are learning about heart, we are learning about arteries, veins, and so on. So these are specialized physiology. Then there is systemic physiology, where we learn about each and every system and associated functions with it. For example, we can start with the skeletal system, muscular system, cardiovascular system, respiratory system, and so on and so forth. And the last is the pathophysiology, where pathos, the word pathos means disease, and the effects of these disease on different organs and organ system is basically another branch of physiology. So what is principle of complementarity? Complement, that is, one is helping the other. Okay, complementary means one helps the other. So what it means is the anatomy of an organ or a part or an organ system is related with its function. That is, structure and function are related with each other. What the function of an organ will be depends upon the structure of that organ. So on the other hand, the structure of an organ decides what the function is going to be. So one is dependent on the other. They complement each other. So the function always reflects the structure, and what the structure can do depends upon a specific function. Okay, so they complement each other. They are like the two faces of the same coin. So going next to the levels of organization, that is, how are these organ system or organisms made up of? Okay, so we'll go with the smallest system to the organism, which is the highest level of organization. So it starts with atoms. What are atoms? Atoms are the smallest substance known. So when we go into the next chapter, you'll see that we are learning about how atoms can be dissociated, but as a whole, atom is considered to be the smallest substance known, and molecules are made up of atoms. So many such atoms join together to form molecules or compounds. And these molecules and compounds usually take the shape of the container. Okay. Several such molecules form organelles. What are organelles? Organelles are like mitochondria is an organelle, lysosome is an organelle, nucleus is an organelle. These are small organelles which are made up of molecules and atoms, which in turn give the shape of a cell. And cell is the smallest living organ. Okay, so it is the smallest living substance known. What is it? Cell is the smallest living substance known. Okay, so cell, inside the cell, you know, these are the organelles which are inside the cell. So going back, atoms join together to form molecules. Molecules in turn form organelles. Organelles, many such organelles together form a cell. A group of cells doing a specialized function is known as tissues. And tissues, many such tissues then join together to form organ. Organs, several such organs join to form an organ system. and 11 such organ systems we have in our body to form an organism or an individual. Okay, so we start with atom, molecules, organelles, cell, tissue, organ system, and organism. So if you look in this slide, in this picture, you will see that these are cells, these are epithelial cells. Many such epithelial cells join together to form epithelial tissue, and these epithelial tissue is a lining of skin in our body, and skin definitely is the part of the body system which is known as the integumentary system. Okay, and if you can take several such examples, you'll see it. For example, let's take neuron. It's a nerve cell, and these nerve cells join together to form nerve tissue, which in turn form the brain and the spinal cord, which forms the nervous system. So here is shown all the different kinds of systems in our body, and these systems together, 11 such systems together form an organism. Okay, so whatever I have said so far is written in words in all of these different in these slides, so you can go over them. We will go over this once more, an example that will help you to understand. First and foremost, these are chemical levels which are made up of atoms and molecules. They join together basically to form the cellular level. For example, in this case, is the smooth muscle cell. The smooth muscle cells then join together to form a smooth muscle tissue. These are layers of smooth muscle cells, and they join together to do a specialized function, and that is that they form a smooth muscle tissue. These smooth muscle tissues in turn, they form an organ which is known as the blood vessel. So not only are the smooth muscle tissue involved, the epithelial tissue is involved, the connective tissue is involved. All such tissues are joining together to form which is called the blood vessel. Okay, then the blood vessels in turn, they form which is the organ system, which is basically hard blood vessels together form a system which is known as a cardiovascular system. This is one of the 11 system, and then there is other 10 system like nervous system, excretory system, digestive system, respiratory system, so on and so forth. 11 such systems together form which is known to form an organism, or the individual, or me and you together. That is basically how we are made up of. These are called the levels of organization. So this in here, next 3-4 slides, you will see each of these systems, what are the different organs associated with it, and what are the functions are listed in here. Okay, so we'll do in brief the integumentary system, which is basically the skin, hair, nails, etc. It is, and its function is for protection, water retention, and so on and so forth. Skeletal system, which is made up of bone and cartilages. Main function is support, movement, protection, to keep acid-base balance, and so on. Muscular system, which is made up of skeletal muscles. Its main function is movement, stability, heat production. Lymphatic system, which is made up of lymphatic vessels, thymus, spleen, tonsils, and its main function is immune and to defend against pathogen. Respiratory system, made up of nose, pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchi, lungs, and its main function is absorption of oxygen, removal of carbon dioxide, and speech, remember. And urinary system, which is made up of kidneys, ureters, urinary bladder, urethra. Its main function is removal of waste, primarily urine, and it's responsible to keep the blood volume, responsible for production of red blood cells. Next comes the nervous system, brain, spinal cord, nerves, and the main function is regulation and coordination of all activities, motor activity, sensation, endocrine, thyroid gland, pituitary gland, hypothalamus, ovaries, etc., are all part of the endocrine system. Principal function is hormone production. Circulatory system is heart, blood vessels, and its main function is distribution of oxygen, removal of waste, electrolyte balance, etc. Digestive system, tongue, teeth, salivary glands, stomach, small intestine, large intestine, liver, gallbladder, pancreas are all part of the digestive system. Main function is nutrient breakdown and absorption, production of several enzymes for digestion, and removal of excretory products also. Male reproductive system main consists of testis, epididymis, prostate, seminal vesicles, and similar kind of organs. Main function is production of sperm and secretion of sex hormones. Similarly, female reproductive system consists of ovaries, urethral tube, uterus, vagina, and the main function is production of eggs and fetal nourishment, fetal development, and secretion of sex hormones. So there are 11 such systems, and all of them are written in here. Please review these systems very well so that you know the basic anatomy and the function of each of these systems, okay? So these are the last ones, I think. Okay, so now we go into the next part of this chapter, is basically to learn how we study anatomy and physiology. Now, this is very important because it's a vast subject, and in order to learn the language of anatomy and physiology, we need to know certain terms and we need to know certain positions in order for it to be easier to remember, okay? So there is a position which is known as the anatomical position, which is basically you stand erect, the body is erect, feet is slightly apart, palms are facing forward, thumbs are pointing away from the body. So these are the basic structure in which a person, when it's standing, is known as the anatomical position. And this is the position that we use all the time for the entire course in order to study the body parts of your of the person. So again, the body standing erect, feet are apart, palms are facing forward, thumbs are away from the body. Next is we need to learn about certain terms that we will be using very, very frequently. Superior and inferior. It comes in pairs, these terms. Superior and inferior are those body parts which are closer to the head region are known as superior, and those which are away from the head region is known as inferior. Anterior and posterior, those body parts which are in front or than at the back is known as anterior, and posterior are those which are in the back. So we will do examples in the next slide. Ventral and dorsal. Ventral, towards the one that goes towards your body is known as ventral, and dorsal is the one that goes to the back of the body, that's dorsal. Superior and deep, the one which is to the surface is superior, one which is very deep inside the body is known as deep, or ones which is not on the surface, deep inside it. And left and right, you do understand which is subject's left side is known as denoted by left, of course, and the right, when it's subject's right side, is denoted by right. medial and lateral. Midline, if you consider an imaginary line that passes from the center of your body, which divides your body into left and right, it's known as the midline, okay? So if the body, if there is an imaginary line that goes from the center of your body, is known as the midline, and any organs that is towards the midline is known as medial, and those which are away from the midline is known as lateral. Proximal and distal, the one that is closer to the point of attachment is known as proximal. That is point of attachment wherever there are joints. Those are usually the points of attachment. Those which are closer to the point of attachment or torso is known as proximal. Those which are away from the point of attachment is known as distal. So this actually gives you the example so that you understand it better. So superior and inferior. So for example, the head is superior to the abdomen. So these terms you have to understand in pairs. Again, superior, the head is superior to the abdomen, or I can say the abdomen is inferior to the head. So it's the same thing we're talking about in a little bit of a different language, okay? So superior and inferior. Towards the head region, it's superior. Towards away from the head region is inferior. Anterior and posterior is also known as ventral and dorsal. The ones that is in front of your body is known as the anterior. The one that is behind your body is known as posterior. So the breastbone is anterior to the spine. So the breastbone, or the rib cage, you can say, is anterior, and the vertebral column, which is behind, is on the posterior end. So if you're comparing between the breastbone and the spine, you will say the breastbone is anterior to the spine, or you can say the spine is posterior to that of the breastbone, okay? And these are the different examples cited in order for you to understand. So apart from that, you can divide the bodies into several planes, or divide it into different parts in order to study anatomy. And some of them, we'll go to the next slide so that it's just easier for us to understand. So if you divide your body, if you basically pass a plane in such a way that your body gets divided into two parts, one in front and the other in the back. This is the one that I'm talking about. So it forms two parts. One is anterior and the other is posterior. That is known as the frontal plane. Okay, frontal plane divides the body into anterior and posterior. Next, if you pass a plane through the body in such a way that there are two parts formed, one is superior, the other is inferior, this is known as the transverse plane. The transverse plane divides the body into superior and inferior. Next, if you pass a plane through the midline, again, the midline is an imaginary line that divides the body into left and right into two equal halves. If you pass a plane through that midline, it's known as the mid-sagittal plane. Again, now this plane doesn't need to always pass through the midline. If you can divide the body into unequal halves, that does not make the body into two equal halves, just unequal halves, then the plane is known as parasagittal plane. So you are dividing the body into left and right, but they are not equal. When they are not equal, it's known as parasagittal plane. When you pass through the midline, it's known as the mid-sagittal plane. Okay, so these are just the different forms and planes that you can divide the body in order to be able to study anatomy better. Now comes the body cavities, and body cavities are basically grooves, or you can say empty spaces, that are present in the body in order to protect the different organs that are present in the body. So there are these cavities actually help to keep the different organs or organ systems in place, number one. Number two, intact and not get harmed by any sort of injury, or they can function better. Okay, so the entire body cavities are mainly divided into two parts. One is known as the dorsal cavity, the other is known as the ventral cavity. The dorsal cavity houses two major things. One is known as the cranial cavity, the other is known as vertebral cavity. So cranial cavity and the vertebral cavity. The ventral cavity in turn is divided into two major parts. One is known as the thoracic cavity, as you can see it in here, thoracic cavity, and the other is the abdominopelvic cavity. In between these two cavities, there's a diaphragm, which is like a membrane-like structure which divides the thoracic cavity and the abdominal cavity, basically like a partition. Okay, the abdominopelvic cavity in turn has two parts. One is known as the abdominal cavity, the other is known as the pelvic cavity. What is inside? What are the organs inside and organ systems inside it? We'll learn in the next slide. So if you look in here, that this is what we were learning. So this is the, if you remember, going back, this is the dorsal and the ventral cavity. So in here, this is the dorsal cavity. Part of the dorsal cavity is the cranial cavity and the vertebral cavity. So it houses the brain and the spinal cord in here. Okay, then comes the ventral cavity. The ventral cavity in turn has what is, you can see this ventral cavity has the thoracic cavity. So this region in here is the thoracic cavity. This is the diaphragm, and this is the abdominopelvic cavity. So in the thoracic cavity houses what is known as the pleural cavity. What is the pleural cavity? Is basically the lungs are in here, and there is another cavity in the center which is known as the pericardial cavity, which houses the heart. Okay, so two lungs, and here in the middle is the heart. The entire thoracic cavity is above the diaphragm, and the abdominopelvic cavity is divided into two parts. One is known as the abdominal cavity, which basically houses the digestive system, and the pelvic cavity, which basically houses the urinary bladder, reproductive organs, and the rectum in here. So these different parts or these cavities hold these organs in place, and it also helps us to understand these different organs and organ parts better. This comes to the next segment of this chapter, which is called homeostasis. So what is homeostasis? Remember, homeostasis is very, very important in our lives, because the adjustment of physiological systems to balance, maintain a balance in our body is basically homeostasis. And without the homeostasis, we would not be able to function properly. So homeostasis, the word comes from the Greek word, which is known as homeo, which is basically means similar, and status, S-T-A-T-I-S-I-S, stasis means state of standing. So it is a state in which it refers to the existence of a stable internal environment. So it is a position or a state of the body where the internal environment remains pretty normal, okay, pretty constant. Okay, various physiological processes act to prevent harmful changes in the composition of body fluids and environment inside our cells. Maintaining homeostasis is absolutely vital to the organism's survival. It is needed. We need to maintain homeostasis in order to be able to survive. failure to do so can lead to fatal, can lead to illnesses and even death. Okay, there are two regulation that take place. One is known as autoregulation, when an organ based system adjusts automatically to the changing environment. So just remember that the environment around us is continuously changing, and this continuous change in the environment needs to be balanced with the internal environment. So the internal environment needs to remain constant, even if the external environment changes, okay? And for that, we need to keep, bring into the picture homeostasis, and homeostasis is something that keeps the internal environment of our body under control, okay? For example, if oxygen levels drop in tissues, then the cells would release chemicals that will dilate or increase the diameter of the blood vessels. This will increase the flow of blood, and the oxygen into that region will increase. So this is like a very simple example how oxygen levels in the tissues are maintained. Extrinsic, this results from the neural or the endocrine system, which is known as neuroendocrine regulation. When one exercises, the nervous system commands the heart to increase the rate, the heart rate increases, and it reduces the flow of the digestive tract. So by doing that, what it does, it brings in blood to the muscles, it brings in oxygen to the muscles, and we are able to do the workout well. So this homeostatic control happens by majorly three interdependent components that control this mechanism. Number one is the receptor, which actually monitors the environment. What is going on? What are the changes in the stimulus? How is the environment changing? All of these questions are taken care by the receptor, which is called the stimuli, okay? As a result of the stimuli, the receptor monitors it, and this receptor then sends it to the control center. Now this control center is the brain, okay? The brain, it's the brain which determines what is going on, okay? How to deal with the problem, okay? Determine the set point at which the variable is maintained, okay? Once the control center has been alarmed, it takes its action. How it takes its action? Through the output. Effector provides a means to respond to the stimuli. So there are changes made, and these changes done by the effector response to make responses that lead to rebound the change in the stimulus and come to the same internal environment. So these three steps, receptor, control center, and effector, combined together help in keeping the homeostatic control of our body. Very important to know this homeostatic control is maintained by two ways. One is called a negative feedback loop. The other is known as a positive feedback loop. Most of our responses are through the negative feedback loop. What is it? It is the original stimulus is reversed. That is, whenever there is a stimulus, there is a change. And if the stimulus is taken out from the equation, the original situation comes back. So we will do this, I'll give you examples and you'll understand better. But this is a way in which the original stimulus is reversed, or the stimulus is taken lowered or removed from the entire process. As a result, the original homeostatic control is maintained. One of the major or best example is the temperature regulation, which is done by hypothalamus, which is part of the brain which regulates our temperature of our body. The positive feedback loop is rare in our body, and in this case the original stimulus is intensified. So original there is a stimulus initially, and that actually is intensified as time goes on or as the process goes on. As a result, it leads to a much intensified output. Okay, and a normal childbirth is an example of it. So negative feedback loop. So if you look into this picture, you'll understand. So this is the homeostasis, normal body temperature. And whenever, for example, the normal body temperature is disturbed. For example, if you're going to beach, okay, you go to the beach, the temperature is 100 degrees. And the temperature rising, body temperature, the body temperature is increasing. As a result, whenever there is increase in the body temperature, it will let the receptors know that there is increase in the body temperature, which will take the information to the brain. And which part of the brain? The hypothalamus of the brain. This is the thermoregulator, and hypothalamus then detects the change and then evaluates and does the action. What it does many things with the help of its effectors. Number one, the sweat glands in the skin increase secretion. So you start sweating, you know, that's a very normal phenomena. Every one of you must have felt. The blood vessels in the skin dilate. So they dilate in order to give in more oxygen. As a result, what happens is increased heat loss through evaporation, increased heat loss through radiation. Both of these responses makes the body come to its normal temperature. And this cycle is absolutely required. It's called the regulation, the feedback regulation of the body temperature. And in order to keep the normal body temperature, this entire process needs to be done so that we can we can go to any place, whether it is in the beach or we can go out in snow. It does not matter, but our internal temperature remains the same. Okay, the other very good example of negative feedback loop is glucose metabolism. So sugar, okay, so I'm pretty sure many of you or all of you have heard the organ called pancreas. Pancreas is an organ which is part of the digestive system, and it produces two hormones. One is called insulin, the other is called glucagon. Okay, both of these hormones, one is insulin, the other glucagon, both are required for glucose metabolism, but they have opposite effects. What insulin does is, whenever there is sugar or glucose in the blood, it takes up glucose. It is responsible for taking up glucose from the blood and storing them in the liver in the form of glycogen. Okay, so it takes up glucose, converts it into glycogen and stores it in the liver. On the other hand, the function of glucagon is to convert glycogen into glucose. So it's just the opposite, okay? So these two hormones secreted by the same organ work opposite to each other in order to keep homeostatic control. So let's understand how glucose metabolism works. So the normal blood glucose level is about 90 milligram per 100 ml of blood. But suppose you have a big donut. Okay, so your glucose concentration is going to go high. When this happens, pancreas starts producing insulin. Insulin produced takes up glucose, converts and takes it to the liver, where it is converted and stored as glycogen. So glucose is converted into glycogen and stored in the liver. And part of it can also be taken up by body cells. So once it is stored, once the blood glucose level decline, this taking up of glucose from the blood helps to keep the glucose concentration in the blood normal, and the normal homeostatic control is maintained. This is one part of the story. The other is, suppose you are fasting, okay? In the morning, you forgot to have your breakfast, your class started again, then you forgot to have your lunch, or you didn't have time to have lunch. Now your glucose levels are going down. When they are going down, the blood glucose level is low now. So when it is low, the pancreas starts producing glucagon, and this actually acts on the liver to convert glycogen into glucose. Now this glucose goes into the blood. As a result, the declining glucose level then results in keeping the homeostasis of the blood glucose level normal. So these two examples that we just went ahead, the body temperature and the glucose metabolism, both are examples of negative feedback loop. Okay, how the original stimulus is shut down in order to keep the homeostatic control. The next slide actually shows you a positive feedback, how the original stimulus is increased in order to result in a much more enhanced action. So this is an example of childbirth. Okay, so I have another picture which will help you to understand. So what happens during childbirth is there is contraction of the uterus. As a result, the stretching of the cervix, which calls upon the brain to produce a hormone which is known as oxytocin. Okay, oxytocin is produced by the posterior hypothalamus, posterior pituitary, you can say, posterior pituitary, and that helps in the contraction and relaxation of the uterus. So let's see the next. I'm sorry. This will help you to understand. So if you see this is the first step in here is head of the fetus is coming out to the uterus. Now nerve impulse goes to the brain detects it, secretes oxytocin, and it secretes oxytocin, and oxytocin helps in the process of contraction and relaxation. As a result, the labor goes on. So the more contraction, relaxation of the uterus happens, more oxytocin is produced from the anterior pituitary, from the posterior pituitary. As a result, this hormone that is secreted accelerates the contraction and relaxation of the muscle, resulting in the childbirth. So this is an example where the original stimulus is stimulated over and over again, which causes the end result of the phenomenon. The other example is blood clotting. Blood clotting is a very good example, and we will be doing blood clotting when we learn about blood in the lecture also. So whenever there are damaged blood vessels, it causes bleeding. These damaged cells cause, so this is the blood vessel and it's damaged. This results in production of certain chemicals. Now, these chemicals are responsible for production of a clot. Once these chemicals are produced and they go into the region, these chemicals enhance the production of more such chemicals. As a result, more and more of these chemicals come into the damaged area. A clot is formed and resulting in blood clotting, which is an absolutely necessary phenomenon in the entire process. Otherwise, we will bleed to death. Okay. This again is an example of positive feedback, how these chemicals produced in the area causes more and more production of the chemicals, which causes the ultimate blood clotting. And this we did right now. This positive and rapid change, this actually again is just an example to show you how the fever, which is again a positive feedback loop, example of it. How metabolic rate, whenever there is increase in the metabolic rate, body produces heat even faster, body temperature rises. Whenever there is rise, there is increase in the metabolic rate, which in turn can cause increase in the fever. So sometimes whenever there is fever, we need to lower the metabolic rate. And if the metabolic rate is not lowered, then the temperature of your body will go on increasing. So these positive and the negative feedback loop are absolutely necessary in our body in order for us to function properly. So this actually just shows you how important the homeostatic balance is. Whenever there is an imbalance, it will result in a disease. And these disease can show symptoms, sign, and there is usually a diagnosis, a skill of distinguishing one disease from the other. And if the homeostatic imbalance happens, it can lead to a disease. But if the homeostatic balance is kept normal, whether it be through the positive feedback loop or through the negative feedback loop, our physiology of our system will continue. Thank you.